Hello, everybody watching the recording. Welcome to the weekly recap. Um, I hope everybody's fine. So let's dive right into it. Interesting things going on. Finally, I mean, I didn't do much in crypto lately because it was just not my environment. As I said last week, I took a lot of stock trades. I mean, Tesla is obviously going ballistic here. I'm very happy with my positioning in this one. So it seems like those high risk assets, they gained a little traction here. Um, I mean, some didn't, right? So I mean, came back to my entry here. Not the worst thing. Still liking the stock. Um, Similar thing here. We distributed a bit. We came back to my entry. The question now is, can we recover? Can we reclaim this little supply here? For now, we're hammering it from below. Should we break this down? Should we lose those local lows? I will cut. I will not allow deep drawdown because I think should we lose this, we go back down here. So you see, every market is basically the same. And I mean, obviously there was a lot more going on here, so I traded here. Gold is also still doing well. Don't know if anybody catched it with me. Yeah, but still very happy with this. Then we come to the whole crypto thingy, which is also looking good, right? I mean, we're still within the range, so there's no reason to be uber bullish. I mean, if I look at my timeline, people are going completely nuts. You don't hear them talking for 2 weeks, and then if you look at timeline, everybody comes back like, "Oh yeah, and finally alt season is back," and blah blah and whatever. So this is all it takes. It's one big green candle. It's all it takes to completely flip sentiment again. And while I still think higher prices are on the table, and as I said in my updates and everywhere, I'm still higher time frame bullish. So there's a reason why I bought all those stocks. It's the same thing like crypto. It's a risk asset class, and usually they move somewhat together. And so I'm very long, very long, and I'm very happy. But with my positioning. But in the end, the sentiment changes so quickly. So there is also reason to not get too bullish, especially because we know how the market moves. It's very rare that the market moves in a straight line, and everybody claims this is what crypto does all the time. But in the end, we have prolonged periods of nothing, and then suddenly something happens. And especially if the sentiment changes so quick, I'm always a little bit cautious. And because I mean the sentiment was very bad and we like reclaimed all of this. And as I said, I expect higher prices, so don't get me wrong. I'm still positioned for that. But as I said, I'm cautious. And so I have this BTC short running still, and it doesn't look very good, does it? Um, but in the end, I'm very willing. So I'm willing to pay the price for this position, like, which is in the end 1% of my trading account, which is not too bad anyway. And we are still in this weekly supply here, like this weekly partial. And first of all, I think we have reached a stage of the cycle where BTC might not correlate with altcoins anymore as much. So if this is really this part of the cycle, the short could still work while altcoins are pumping. I mean, Doge, ever since I entered the short, Doge to 20%. So obviously the correlation isn't as high right now. And so I'm still comfortable in this short here. We are still in supply and everything. We're still around the 0.5. Um, and so this hedges all my other risk ideas more or less, and also this is also a reason why I took the Nvidia short, because I think those major assets that did incredibly well the whole cycle, it's maybe time for them to pause a little bit. So this is just my what I expect. It's just one opinion of many and one ideas of many. So don't take this for granted, but maybe it's the time of the cycle where underdogs start outperforming. Um, and so those big major assets, which everybody knows and loves by now, because I mean, obviously, if you bought Nvidia somewhere down here in 22, 23, you're sitting in very big and juicy profits. And so common sense would be if the market goes higher, those should go higher as well. Why? Why? Because they always outperform. And in the same way, Bitcoin did basically the same thing. Let's close this. Oh, yeah, doesn't really matter. So BTC was also more or less up. Only people started to love BTC for this because it was more or less a pretty easy cycle, especially compared to altcoins. Um, and so I think should altcoins start outperforming, the correlation will be even lower. And in the same way, like maybe lower caps gain traction in the stock market, and in the same way, like altcoins maybe do. So those large caps, those crowd favorites, they maybe take a break, or they even like go down a bit. So we have most of the time we have correlation in those markets, but not any time. And I mean Tesla and SPX and everything is proving that, because the SPX is ripping to new highs, and the golden horse, which was usually always dragging the market up, did basically nothing, and it's still within the supply. We have signs for absorption. Volume is considerably here, so I think there is some absorption going on. So in the end, I'm very happy to be short here, and I'm not saying we nuke to like 115 from here immediately, but as said, some top could form here, and I would be very happy to catch Nvidia up here with a short. And in the same way, BTC, even though, as said, even though I expect this to get stopped, I'm willing to pay the price for that, just because you never know. And looking at my timeline, to be honest, people are so crazy bullish right now. And there's always this short period of time where they're all right, which is totally fine. I mean, as said, I'm positioned for that, but most of the time they're not, and I can't know beforehand if they are or if they don't. And I mean, we have many reasons to expect a little bump in the road, at least. Power's back. That's great. You see, we are at all-time highs in total too, and while the crowd is seeing this as bullish, we know how all-time highs react, right? Look at ETH, look at in general all-time highs on major assets and everything. It's usually a little more reactive than this. Oops. So, as said, I'm cautious. My whole strategy. It just means I'm locking in gains if I can, or I'm looking for hedges. Because as said, we are entering the supply area on almost on many majors. And also here we are at range highs again. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a bump in the road, but in the end, I can't know. So I try to be prepared for every outcome, manage my risk around those key levels. Obviously, BTCD is going lower. We have on USDT, we're entering the demand, the range low. So as said, there is confluence for being not as uber bullish as the X timeline is, and usually it pays to be contrarian to them. So this is what I am, more or less, and still, as said, giga long, maybe adding a little scalp here on Doge, should we get this level, because it's not very optimal, right? Because we are at higher time frame or in premium of the swing. We haven't taken out this high, but I mean a low size position to add to maybe milk this move a little more. Why not? And funny enough, on Doge, I think I talked about this last week. I mean, I had this plan of this head and shoulders getting smashed. The liquidity here was marked with the dollar, and we did exactly that, more or less. We did it in a very different way than I expected, because after this pump I thought it's on. Then we had this prolonged ranging. We never lost this level, which I find very interesting. And so the plan was good, the execution was not so good on this play, but in the end, as said, my goal is making money, not to be right all the time or being perfect, and I achieved my goal, and so everything's fine. Yeah, I think, as said, a pullback would make sense. Looking at sentiment, looking at everything, and if it doesn't come, I'm also prepared. And should the pullback come, it's nice to have the short. Maybe we go back down to this demand. I mean, usually, as said, price moves not in a straight line. Most of the time, we go back. We have some squiggles along the way. And yeah, time will tell. Okay. Um, what else? I mean, as said, the stock market is going ballistic pretty much. I'm very happy with that. I mean, my stock portfolio, my account, my new account, which I made, is already up 12% or something since early August, which is amazing. I'm very happy with that because this means in crypto, last month in crypto I performed, I had like 12%. This month, or like 1 month and 1 week, I had another 12%. And I mean, the time I invested into this performance is like compared to what I like last year did, for example, to learn all this. Of course, I mean, you need to put in the time, right? But right now, with those plays here, I invest maybe 3, 4, 5 hours a week, and then I enter when it's time, and then I manage and I look at them every day a little bit. Um, and I didn't even like I there's no reason for me to look at them, but I have fun studying my positions and looking how price develops. But in the end, I could enter. I make my plan a few hours a week. I make my plan. I enter when it's time. I exit when it's time. And this is, yeah. So the time money ratio on those places is so huge, is insane. I mean, how I milked this move on Tesla in the group with once we broke out here, I said, okay, I want to be long. I went long. I accidentally closed the whole position here. In the end, it paid me something, so everything is fine. Again, we went back to the demand. I went long again. I took a profit again, and I mean now it's ripping, and my high time frame positions are from here, and I haven't even touched them really. So this position is completely untouched. What, because I always added on the way up. I mean, if you look at the whole Tesla thread, it's like I don't know how many percent I already made with Tesla since ever since this low here, and it's it's so easy because look at this. I mean, of course, this was a little nasty, right? I mean, this is not your like comfortable move or something, but it just hit into demand, and it went back to supply. You could have locked in some gains. Then it went back to this demand. And I mean, here's a little choppy area, right? So there's this retest and things and that, and then we took out the slow. So this was not so easy to read, but then we just broke above as usual. 1, 2, 3 touches on the trend line, usual work, kind of nice. And on the fourth one, usually it doesn't. Then see, it's just this. I mean, it's just a trend line, right? And it's the perfect retest here of this trend line, and there was also this 2 day demand or 4 day demand, and since then yeah, so it's very very easy money in my opinion, and as said, I don't need to trade crypto to make extraordinary performance, because in the end it's all about R, and it doesn't really matter if it moves 10% or 7 or 1%, because it's about R. And yeah, it's volatile, but in some way it's also very predictable. um, And so now we hit this hidden one. We have this big supply here. I'm looking to TP big here on my high time frame positions. I didn't yesterday because I think 420 makes a lot of sense, and usually it reacts better to supply and demand than to those hidden levels. Um, and so in the end, yeah, we will see if I can milk a little more out of here. But in the end, I'm very very happy with my position and with the gains I made ever since here. Um, And as said, this is all in the group, and I find it so fascinating that the engagement on on those stock ideas and everything is way lower than on crypto still. I mean, I get it. Most people are coming into the group and into the market with crypto, but you see how predictable this is. And then I mean, compared to, yes, if you know what you're doing, like for example, Lucky right now, you make a whole lot of money through those type of moves. But in the end, for me, there was I didn't see anything, so I did just my thing on those plays. And as said, I don't need a shitcoin to have. I mean, this stock, it's a very high volume, right? I mean, look at this volume. It's huge, and it did 40% in just 2 weeks or something since late August. Look, and yesterday it spiked up 20%. I TP'd 35% here, and in the same fashion, I'm looking to TP more here of this position. Um, but I said I can wait over the weekend. So I locked in some gains. Worst case, the opening is a little lower, but usually I can also sell pre-market, so usually this is not a huge thing. And I'm really curious why so few people seem to be interested in such place, because as said, you can buy a CFD depending on your country. It's 10x leverage. If you have a margin-based account, this is even you can even trade more because you get like a 2x leverage on your whole account. And so, in my opinion, there's no reason to only trade crypto. But in the end, as said, crypto seems to start to be interesting again as well. Some levels have formed. Gonna execute on them. Should they hit? I mean, here's 3-day level looks pretty juicy, right? I mean, we can probably play it pretty tight because there is no untouched liquidity within this level, or at least I haven't found one. And so we can take this as a range trade first. It's already to the range high, would already pay around 5 hours or something. And then, of course, should the market start trending again from here, we can trade the rest or something, which is like always my strategy as swing trader. I try to take such positions, but I'm always looking local gains. You see, this pattern is repeating over and over and over, because my goal in the market is to have as much returns as possible with as little as time as possible. And I just figured trading all the time does not necessarily increase my performance, because I'm pretty much always consistently around 5% or something. I aim for 10, and then I have these outliers like this month on my stock portfolio, the outlier on my crypto portfolio last month, and usually this happens when the market starts trending. So I want to be a swing trader, so I trade those ranges when they come. I take those levels, and I lock in local gains. Why? Because first of all, I never know if price breaks out. It's the same thing like here. I mean, it looks strong, right? Everybody's is happy with this move, but in the end, we're still below this high here. And I mean, I haven't looked at order flow today, which can give confluence if this is holding or not. But in the end, there's no reason to expect this if this level here is still holding. And so, if I would take this, so let's imagine we reject from here, we go back to the level. I would trade this to the highs, lock in gains depending on order flow, depending on the whole situation, maybe up to 50%. If it's looking like it wants to go higher, then maybe just 40, 30, 20. I'm very flexible with that. But then gains are locked in. And I mean, in this case, it would be a 5 hour or something. So if I lock in 50%, I'm already taking 2.5 hour from this position with the potential to make even more. And as said, you will see this pattern in me over and over and over again. I in the white belt stream, I this was on I took this trade and had a white belt stream right after, and I looked with the group at this level, and I said, okay, look, it looks like it's going to reject from here. So I locked in some gains here, live, and then we went back to this demand area here, and it never came back, and now it rips to the highs. And as said, I locked in uh, another gain here, so I banked more profits here, and we have taken out this, but we are now in this higher time frame all-time high supply area, and so I don't expect this to break and to rally to whatever kind of crazy number, even though it could, but it's not a given, and so I lock in gains on each level if I see it's necessary. Like this one is definitely an important level, so of course I lock in gains. And yeah, I might have taken 50% of this position already, which is on this one because it's so wide. I could have played this a lot tighter, but in the end, I don't care. I locked in maybe 2R. No, I said 50%, so probably just 1.5R. But at the same time, I'm now exposed to the stock, which, as said, it could definitely go into price discovery again. But because I can't know, I don't expect it before it happens. But as said, those plays can turn out to become RR monsters, because should it start rip, I mean, these things are really aggressive, right? And should it do that, I'm very happily exposed with my 50% thing, and if the momentum fades with the rest of the position, and then I can lock in the rest. Um, and the same way, like in every market, it's the same way. Crypto moves a little different, for example, because people expect this all the time. They always want to have those moves, and so it's a little more predatory regarding this trading style, in my opinion. That's why I lock sometimes even more gains, taking it as a local trade, local range trade, locking in gains, and then if a breakout comes, I'm nicely positioned, already profitable. Um, yeah. Yeah, that's it from my side. I think I've said everything I want to say. Look into the market, guys. I'm gonna look at your questions now. Um, how do you trade stop loss for these positions? A rough illustration. I never trail. I almost never trail. My stop loss fixed. Because I'm doing this full time and I just know my positions. I'm looking at them 100 times a day probably, especially on the ones that are moving. I mean, if there is nothing happening, I mean, if there's just 0%, why would I look? But I mean, if it's 20%, there's of course usually something to do. Um, and so in this case, I locked in my gains as I mentioned, and now, should the momentum fade here, like if we don't see strength throughout this level, but rather distribution and order flow signs and absorption and all that, I'm gonna lock in more gains and probably take another 20-25% because then the trade has given me what I wanted. And if it gives me more, if the market gives me more, that's great, but I don't expect it. Especially looking at this could definitely be distribution, and then we just go down and yeah, uh, it's over for the stock because it did already over a 10x. And I don't want to give more back than necessary, but I don't really trail my stop loss in those plays as said. In this on this one there's a rough illustration more or less. Why? Because it's also very aggressive in its movement. Um, and the thing is, here's demand, and we seem to get absorbed here. And we made also a high, we broke the trend and all that. So I added a good chunk back of the profits I took up here. Um, and I have my stop loss here, but it's not set up here, so it's just in my mind. It's just for me. So should we lose this, and I would probably not wait for this because if I see weakness into this level, there's just nothing going on. It's very likely that we go at least back to this demand, or or even back to this, because this stock has a history of aggressive pumps coming back all the way to the low, aggressive pump coming back all the way to the low. So why would it be different now? The only big difference is it's on very high volume. The narrative is gaining traction, and I mean it reaccumulated basically for yeah 10 years, and so I'm very loose with my trailing. But if we for example lose this level, there I see no reason to be in this position anymore. So my stop loss is probably rather something like this, and then you see I sold, and then it's probably going down another 20% or something, and then I can add this back anytime because it's just level by level. It's probabilistic thinking. Should this not hold, I cut. Should this hold, I add. It's just if then more or less I execute like a machine on those. And because as I said, I do this full time. I know my positions, and usually this does not happen within one day. So I have some time to make my choice, to make my decision based on price action, live price action. Another interesting example is this one. It's Synopsys. It's one of the global players in building chips for robotics. And I think the narrative will be very big soon. And I mean, it nuked 36% in one single day. Into the demand, and then I said in live also in the group, I will wait a little bit to see if what it does down here. And it did not lose the local structure. It rather showed signs that it wants to reaccumulate here. So I bought in pre-market. It's probably going back to my entry. But the idea is, should this low been lost, I'm out of this position. So there is no reason for me to trail this right now. If I don't see any strength, I could cut it early, but in the end, I'm just accepting the risk here. And as I said, I like this stock from a narrative perspective, from an investment perspective. It's a big company building something that is going to be very important in the future. And sometimes it's not just about locking in gains all the time and making like quick money. For sometimes these plays, these can be entries for years. You see, it's not crypto. If this is a real company making real money with real investors, not just gamblers and whales trying to manipulate you, those can rip for years, right? Of course, you have like drawdowns along the way, so locking in gains always makes sense. And and this is not something that happens very often. And this could have two. This could be for two reasons. First, it could be just one big manipulation move, um, because somebody knows something, and this is like the COVID crash of this one before it really starts ripping, before the narrative gains traction. Um, or it's just a big whale saying, "Damn it, I made my 10x with this stock. I don't need it anymore." The company, maybe they know something we don't. Maybe the company is beneath the surface, not what it seems. Maybe it's, yeah, not profitable or whatever. Or it's, I think that the reason for this nuke was that they lost a big customer or something. But I mean, 36% in a single day within a few hours because they lost one big customer. Yeah, it's, as I said, it could be two things. It could either be a big manipulation, or it's really over for them. Maybe this is a really important customer, or they're not delivering, or whatever. In the end, it's all narrative, and this is why I manage my risk around this move, because if I'm wrong, I pay my stop, and if I'm right, I'm exposed to maybe a company that is in the future going to have a very big, bright future. I hope this makes sense for you with the whole trailing the stop loss thingy. Same here. So should we lose, for example, this low? I will probably start moving it to break even, because I want to have it at break even, because sometimes I don't have the time to like sell it immediately. And if I decide to have it at break even, it's definitely at break even. But what I don't like is to trailing it behind. This is not my style. Also here, for example, so I have my spot stop soft here, which is more or less, should we lose all this and this level and this and this and this? So I don't want to be in this position anymore, but of course I can't. I have my spot back not on exchanges, so I need to sell it manually. And the same way I treat most of my per positions, if it's not like lower time frame scalping stuff. Um, you see, should we come back, take this level, take this high again? So from from this point on, it makes perfect sense for me to lock in again. If this is the high, to lock in gains and to move my stop loss to break even. Maybe I get stopped out at break even, maybe not. Maybe I lock another gain in here, and then this happens, or this happens and I would have been stopped out completely. So I want to have my stop at break even for sure. Um, After I reach the 0.5, or I reach a local high, which basically when I want to take a profit and at a level, um, on a trade, then usually it's time to move the stop loss at least to break even. But I don't see a reason to trail it somewhere tight here. I could still sell manually if I see a reason for that. But I don't want to have it, because I got stopped out and wigged out so often because of my trailing my stop loss, and it was just frustrating. And I've yeah, and then I stopped doing it, and then I saw my performance is better if I don't do it. And so why would I act against my own data? The question is if it's the same for you, because obviously we have different lives, and if it's not possible for you to manage your positions manually as efficient because of like work or family, or no access to a computer or a phone during work or whatever it is, you shouldn't do it like I do it, because in the end you should do what works for you. And if it's not working for you, don't do it. If it works for you, do it. It's as simple as that. And trailing, if you trail, then always behind a level where your trade would be invalidated if it's lost. And usually I want to wait for those closes to invalidate my trade, so I do it manually. So you don't even wait for breaker blocks on the stock. You just trade supply and demand. Yeah, it's as simple as that. I usually it really I've refined this level here on Nvidia just for fun. I mean, there's the 6 hour level. Oops. Um, you see the screen block, and so far it's holding quite well. I mean, and this doesn't look like it wants to go above it, right? Um, but in the end, I trade the whole supply thing here. I do not trade the 6 hour level, because then I would have been playing it like this. I'm trading the higher time frame supply here, because obviously it's distributing, and we also lost the structure here. So this pump into the level, into the supply again. I use this pump to sell, maybe alongside whales, maybe against them. We will see. Um, because I think Nvidia is pretty much done for this cycle. And if not, I take my stop. I don't adapt because I have no money to invest on those. Lol. Uh, yeah, the question is, you still have money because otherwise you wouldn't be in the market. And I know that people think you need to have a certain size or anything, but in my view, if you split up your portfolio and you trade 50% this or 60% this or whatever suits your style and your wishes and needs, makes sense then. And as said, more markets, more opportunities, and you maybe find that you perform a lot better in another market. And if you just keep on trading crypto all the time, um, and you never check out another market because you think you have not enough money for that, you will never figure if it's flat, maybe a lot more profitable for you to trade another market. And as said, in the end, everybody needs to know for themselves, of course. So I'm not giving any advice here. I'm just telling you, try, play around, make experiences, because maybe you perform a lot better in stocks or in Forex or whatever it is. And if it's not the case, you can still go back to crypto. It's all your learning phase. The beginning stages of your career are not to make a lot of money with trading. If you do, that's great. It's a nice side effect, but you should aim for making experiences. Yeah, I look at those, as I said, I look at breaker blocks as well, sometimes to refine levels, but in the end, I'm trading supply and demand, and this is what works best on stocks, to be honest. Maybe very high time frame breaker blocks, but everything below very high time frame, and I talk about above weekly or something. I haven't got the results I have with just simple supply and demand stuff. I have an example for this as well, by the way. We have your next era energy. I marked it the whole supply thingy here, demand, and it's to see what it does. I mean, you just need to look at the structure of your stock or of your asset and to see what it does. Because if it's not reacting to supply and demand, I wouldn't use it. But in this case, you see a similar structure than on Tesla. This is the demand, right? We go up, supply, back to the demand, supply, back to the demand, supply, we break out a little bit, more or less, but back to the demand, supply, back to the demand, a little lower this time, which almost could stop me out. I mean, I didn't get stopped by a few cents, actually, like 2, 3 cents, something. And sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you win, right? Um, and so in the end, I'm just trading supply and demand, and you see there is this breaker block somewhere, which I marked out in the beginning. Here's this 2 day. I don't remember what was it. There's also this 4 day, more or less. There's also this red one here, but in the end, you see it just nuked through completely, and it came back to the demand. It even came back to this demand. It took out the low, stopping people like me. And that doesn't mean the level will work now, but I just waited because I know that those breaker blocks usually don't work as well in stocks, and it didn't, and so I entered at the demand again. I can't justify holding stocks with my current situation. I need to be more liquid. I mean, what your situation is can only know you, right? Um, futures. So futures is very complicated on stocks because you usually have expiry dates. You need to like set a certain time as long as you want to hold the stock and blah blah. So CFDs are usually the way to go. And depending on your country, they offer up to 10 to 20x sometimes leverage. And then if you have a margin account, your account's already 2x leverage. So you can technically have 20x leverage. And I'm not saying you should buy, for example, the S&P here and hold it for a year. I mean, if you want to trade, you can still trade stocks. You see the whole thing I showed you, locking in those local gains. I said those things move aggressive, so you can still trade them the same way you can trade crypto. And I said I'm not saying you should or you must. I'm just saying gain experience in all kinds of fields and figure out your strength and your weaknesses. Maybe one market suits your strength and your type of thinking and you're trading a lot better. And if you have a better performance on this market, why would you trade anything else? See? And then you have just more options and can collect um, more experience. I don't have money to pay my bills. Imagine to put it into stocks. Uh, I mean, this doesn't sound very healthy if you can't pay your bills. But in the end, you're still in the market, right? You're still investing in crypto, trading crypto, whatever it is. Um, so there is money somewhere, somehow, I guess. Is there funded accounts that would us let swing trade these CFDs? I know that some fundeds don't let you swing trade, only day trade. Um, I'm not a prop firm expert. I don't really like them, to be honest. I mean, I trade. I have this one account. I trade it myself. I round trip every now and then all my gains. Then I do some stupid stuff because of the lot sizes, because it's not the same like on the usual broker and stuff like that. So I'm by far by no means a prop firm expert, but I know that you can, for example, swing trade on FTMO because this is what I do most of the time. And it's not CFDs, but of course you have leverage. I mean, it's a 100K account. You can only lose 10K, which makes it more or less a 10K account with a 10x leverage. So you have leverage, and I mean, your initial investment on this one would be $500. So of course you leverage your $500 into extremes, more or less. But they don't allow, for example, also those smaller stocks, those high volatile moving ones, inefficient ones, which are, in my opinion, way easier to trade because the more aggressive something moves, usually the more inefficient it is, and inefficiencies can be exploited. And so, yeah, as I said, it just suits my style. I like aggressive movements. And those can't be traded on most prop firms. I don't know if there are some, but I said I don't see a reason for it because if I split my attention too much, my performance will suffer. I'm quite sure of that. And I'm doing well with my private account, so everything's fine. But in the end, if your situation requires you to have such a funded account, it can be incredible, like leverage to your overall net worth. And yeah, why not give it a try? And I said I can't tell you a lot about prop firms in general. Would you agree that ETH funding rate is signaling overconfidence? It's sitting at 0.00 something. So I wouldn't say overconfidence looking at it. It's not looking like a big spike, like big over euphoric exposure, but it's also not looking like, yeah, it's definitely going higher. So I have no clear signal from it right now. I see that longs are opening into this pump. For example, if you look at Doge, I see that so shorts can't get enough, as it seems on Doge. Also on Solana, people are aggressively shorting into this pump, which is a sign for continuation. And I mean, the market likes to move together, so probably also a good sign for the ETH, where things are more balanced right now. And I said it's not a super euphoric kind of spike yet, but this doesn't like say we can't reject locally, but it means it's probably not a higher time frame major top yet. I still waiting for this big spike into maybe 0.03 something. So I wouldn't say overconfidence or something. I mean, you need to consider that of course longs are opening into this move, but the move needs to come from somewhere. So it's always someone buying if the market moves up, and why not if if the longs don't get absorbed, and if this get again does not get out of hand and unbalanced into one direction, I see no reason to call it to call for that right now. But as I said, a local pullback is always on the table. Usually, if the market doesn't move in a straight line. Max, how do you even chart stocks with so many gaps? Yeah, just yeah, it looks odd. I remember I remember hating it in the beginning because I was not trained for it. Um, and I just treat them more or less like FVGs. And usually, if there is a gap, price wants to come back to this gap. It doesn't mean that it will like provide the perfect reversal or something. It just means there is liquidity left, um, and the market wants to fill this gap at some point. And you see we have, for example, also this gap, even though it's not a real gap. And now we have two gaps here on NVIDIA. So you see this gap will probably be filled. and from here on I can decide what to do with this position. It's a swing position, so I probably won't TP here. But if I see like signs of absorption within this gap and I expect again higher prices, I can decide to move my stop to break even. And so as I said, I treat those gaps as like empty areas on the chart which still contain liquidity. And in the end, you see those gaps usually will all be filled and they can provide entries, but they can also just provide a signal for you to know, okay, the price will most likely go back there. And even more than on crypto or FEGs, because it happens like overnight or pre and aftermarket where most people don't and can't trade. And so a lot of liquidity is left, usually more than on FEGs. You get it, bro, you hate crypto? No, I don't hate crypto. I actually like it a lot. It's still I can't even say it's my favorite market, but I mean for swing trades and for exposure around higher time frame extremes, it's just so nice. And I mean the higher time frame game, like exposing yourself around the extremes, buying into higher time frame discount, selling into higher time frame premium, is just an easy money glitch, more or less. I mean, if you always expect moonshots, it's the expectations get a lot of times get shattered. So locking in profits is the way to go on altcoins and on crypto. But as said, those kind of moves and swings, they are very, very, very nice. And sometimes trading is also very, very nice in crypto. And sometimes it's not. And sometimes I just see, okay, this is not my kind of environment. I just rather look somewhere else. But I actually like crypto a lot because it has so many advantages also from a trading perspective and stuff. I'm not invested in anything right now. Um, mhm. But what? So you probably trade, right? Um, because why would you be here otherwise? What I've left is being used to understand the market better in this etc. Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. See it as learning phase. Um, and I said, just just play around, gain experience everywhere. Because if it's not a huge amount of money anyway, and you know you're not going to be like 1,000 exit overnight, and this is not your goal, then your goal should be collecting experience. And if you can see it like that, then collect as much experience as you can in every market. Is what I want to say. Because I said at some point it makes a click, and your market is probably um, you found your market more or less. Once it become profitable prop firms again, yeah, that's a nice goal. Is this live getting recorded? Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's definitely recorded. Every time it gets close to 0.1, guess you talk about funding still. At least has a small pullback, same as BTC. Yeah, sure. At some point it gets a little over leveraged, overheated. And as said, a pullback here makes sense from several perspectives. And I wouldn't expect moonshots until as long as we are still within the range. And if the range is breaking, you can look for price discovery targets. Yeah, Doge left us a level, and I said earlier I'm probably going to scalp it um, if it comes when I'm around, if it even comes, because it doesn't look like it wants to pull back right now. Um, but yeah, I'm probably gonna scalp this if it comes. Lower size, of course, it's not very optimal here in premium of the range, but it could provide a nice little scalp idea. Maybe continuation momentum trade um, with local TPs, of course. Can you show us other ways you can read funding and premium on order flow? Yeah, I see you draw lines and find diffs on them. My understanding isn't that good yet. I made actually, I think the second stream I ever made, I can send you the link, which is also in the recordings. I talked about this a lot, so like a whole stream. But we can go over this next time. Right now, it's not enough time anymore because I need to do something right after, and I need to pee as well. um, but as said, the second stream is very long, a very long time. Not a very long time. I talk a lot about the whole order flow stuff and how I use it and why it's so powerful. But we can go over this next time again. Dots connected, send Doge to the moon. Yeah, why not? Why not? Don't see a reason why it couldn't do that. Doge is actually right now, in my view, one of the strongest because we took out this 12-hour block right now. I mean, we're still within the supply, but I mean, the supply is more or less pretty empty on high time frame. It's just a wick, and we reclaimed this block here. And of course, let's see if a 3 drive is on the table. So I'm definitely locking in gains around the 0.3 level. I mean, my whole Doge stack spot bag is surging right now. And as we know, crypto likes to retrace those moves very quick. And so I'd rather lock in 30% gains or something. And then we will see if this is easily reclaimed. Because I mean, Doge does this sometimes, correct? So why not? As said, why should we expect this can't happen? Because as we know, it can. But yeah, first of all, we need to reclaim this whole supply thing here. And there's no reason to expect this moonshot before this is reclaimed. And then also there's this this funny little chart about Doge and Tesla, which I find interesting. Of course, it's just why has it no history? Did I save the wrong one? Yeah, I saved the wrong one. Here we go. It's still reacting to supply and demand, right? And it makes sense because if we like consider that Elon Musk is the main driver behind those two assets, and he's also not unlimited money, so he can't print money. So he's probably moving his money around between his favorite assets. And I think looking at this, supply and demand might be a thing. I mean, it came back to this demand. It came once again back to this demand. We then hit the supply 2 times already, back to the demand, back to the demand. And now Doge is like gaining a little bit against Tesla, even though Tesla is moving very aggressive higher as well. So there's a lot of money flowing in both of them right now because they're both surging. This chart is not moving. And should Doge decide to outperform, we have also a target here, which is a 60% something 60% outperformance against Tesla. So if Tesla is nuking, this is of course not going to be 60% for Doge. And if they rip together, this could of course like be then the higher time from top. I mean, Doge could rally 300%. If Tesla does the same, this chart is not moving more or less. But we have supply, and we have again supply here, and this can add as confluence. Because I said in the end, it's about money flow, it's about rotations. There is not unlimited money, and if we know the intentions of those controlling our assets, yeah, we might be able to spot their footprints a little more, a little better. Will be able to pull out stock and faux kick chart. I'm not quite sure what a faux kick chart is. Yeah, I'm gonna send you the stream. No problem. And actually, I can send it into the group right now and to the chat. Yeah, it was the second one. And as said, guys, watch those. A lot of times you have questions which you answered already in some streams or something, because I mean talking about this is a lot easier of course than writing it. And make sure you go over those streams. I mean not just the live ones, because but also like the old ones, because a lot of questions are already covered, and I have no problem talking about it again because I also learn and have new information, or can explain it better, or can like add new knowledge. So I have no problem talking about it again. But a lot of your questions already answered in those previous streams, and it's also interesting to see how live PA looked back then and compare it to what it became, how it went since then. Um, and plus, it's not just about updating each and every week about something that happens right now. It's sometimes, as I said, the whole stream was about order flow and how I use it, how I look at it at a higher time frame and stuff. So it's also educational video more or less. Um, but yeah, make sure to check it out. Is it possible for you to do TA on one stock? Thank you. Yeah, I more or less did that on Tesla. Um, so the main thing why I usually also recommend to stick to a few assets. I mean, looking at my watch list, I don't follow my own advice, but I have no problem with that. I did narrow down my focus in the beginning, so I can widen it now again because now it's not overwhelming for me to look at 20 different charts or whatever. But usually I see people like a little overwhelmed, being overwhelmed with that. So choose a few assets from a few markets and make sure you understand the behavior. Because what I said earlier about Doge and Tesla, if we consider Elon Musk being the main driver behind both, as richest man in the world with his rich friends and his influence and all that, it makes sense to understand their correlation. So I made this chart. It just makes sense from a like whole like liquidity perspective and whale perspective. But trading Tesla on its own, I don't need to know what Doge is doing, of course. I just need to know what Tesla is doing and why does it what it does. I mean, if I just look at a naked chart, I mean it's not naked. Um, what is all this? If I look at a naked chart, it's usually pretty. So one kind of thing is pretty dominant, and depending on what market, usually it has its like in unique properties. Like stocks, for example, like I said before, stocks usually love to react to supply and demand. So more stocks than not, I found are reacting to supply and demand. So my first my first TA, the first thing I do on stocks is looking for supply and demand because I have already this knowledge of okay, it's usually supply and demand. So why would I look for anything else before? And then I go on very high time frame, and then I check out supply and demand. I mean, of course, order blocks, but also even if it's not the most common order block, it's supply, right? It's a high, and I could skip through 1,000 timeframes, but in the end, not overcomplicated. This is this is like our supply, and of course I refine it, and of course I look into the supply and everything, but I keep it very simple on stocks, to be honest. And this is, in my opinion, this is why I perform so well because I see the whole thing here. So more or less, since here is demand, and I want to be long from this demand because I know Tesla loves reacting on this demand, and usually it reacts enough to at least take a profit, move to stop to break even, and if it doesn't, I take my stop, of course. But if you add on top like the whole context, like understanding where the system and the market is heading, because you study history and you can start connecting dots. I don't know which if somebody of you watched the Ray Dalio interview I've shared, the podcast. And this guy studied, I mean, he has the biggest hedge fund in the world. And this guy studied 500 years of history, of market history, of politics, of systems, of everything, 500 years of human history to make conclusions for the future, to see where the system is heading, where the economy is heading, and all this. And do you think without doing this, he could have done the same? No, he says this was one of the most important things to learn from the past and apply this knowledge on the future. If you want to be an investor, a swing trader, understanding the higher time frame context, you need to do that. And I see almost nobody doing that. Nobody is interested. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong. I do this since my early stages. This was always my main passion, and I needed to force myself into doing other things. Everybody has its own preferences, and there's a lot more than just this to do in trading, of course. But this adds such a huge confluence. And if you like, for example, I think, in my opinion, also the biggest edge that Monitor has is not the breaker blocks and the stuff. I mean, this double breaker block stuff is pretty amazing. But a lot of people trade breaker blocks, but what makes him so unique and what I've not seen from any trader before is the amount of so the preciseness of his predictions of the system and of the market. And this comes from studying the past. This comes from connecting the dots and not just looking at Wales posts and trying to figure out if he wants to like screw you up with this post, or if it's like a real hint or whatever. I mean, this can add confidence, but people love getting opinions from whales without having the data to back it up. In my opinion, this is not like connecting the dots. This is looking at posts, and you can never be sure if you get like if he's like tricking you, trying to trick you or not, because you don't know what's going on inside of his head. What you can know, so what you know is charts, is history, everything that was written down. Of course, history is also a little skewed sometimes because the winner writes history. But in the end, the charts back it up. So if you like, for example, look at the 1920s, if you look at the 60s, and all those times, you can compare those times to the charts, and then you can kind of come up with conclusions how this is similar or how this is different to the current situation. And if you have this higher time frame context, as I said, I definitely wanted to be long here because I expected some kind of recovery. I do not expect a moonshot from here, like going to 1K or something, but I knew we probably heading back to the range high, and we definitely heading back to the 0.5 of the swing, because we usually almost always do. And this is how I approach a lot of my charts and a lot of my ideas. And this is not like skipping through 1,000 timeframes, especially not on stocks. I just look at the charts and then I come up with where is supply and demand. And still, I don't neglect the whole breaker block, or I try to combine all my knowledge and make it one big idea for one asset, for example. And for example, this one here, this was like this money. I think Money Tower shared this, and look, this double hidden here, how perfectly it reacted. And if you, of course, if you went long here, that's even better than my entry, but I didn't. So it's not wise to neglect one single thing. So make a whole strategy out of all of your knowledge. Everything you know can be useful if used right. And so this was definitely a generational entry here. And in the end, it was also demand. I mean, this was the manipulation move where it seemed like the demand did not work and we skipped it 2 times and whatever. But you see, we came back. So this was the area of interest for this whale. He just pushed it a bit lower to trigger stops. Then he pushed it higher to liquidate shorts. And then we came back to this area because this whole area here was the area of interest before the big higher time frame move happened. And everything we do within this area is just the refinement. And don't miss out on higher time frame swings because you over refine those big levels, those whales footprints, more or less. Know what you're trading. If you trade lower time frame, sure, refine, like do whatever makes you profitable. But I can tell you in higher time frame, over refinement leads to missing out, leads to perfection, leads to unnecessary stops because your stop loss was just too tight and whatnot. In the end, it's big areas. Whales accumulate within areas. Whales cannot like accumulate within, like on the dot, on the cent. They accumulate in areas. And yeah, it seems like they did. It seems like this whole move is shaping up quite aggressive, quite round. And usually if Tesla starts doing this, like this chop higher, like it did here, we have an impulse. And you could argue this whole thing here is this, and higher time frame, higher highs and everything. So I think Tesla looks pretty strong. I'm glad that it's one of my biggest bags. And as said, it's performing quite good. So you don't need crypto for such performances. And as said, it's like, okay, I go along here. Of course, I tried to refine this within the gaps and everything. But would I have taken this level like this because there was this refined level here? And I would have played it like this because I say, okay, yeah, I include the gap here and whatnot. It's not so nice. So I just cover the whole area. Maybe I enter a little bit early to don't get front run. Easy money. It's easy money. Just need to have the patience and to have a plan in mind for those levels. Okay, guys. I think that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining. I wish you all a great weekend, and we talk next week. Bye bye.